Yeah, Jackie, and this appears that about 40 seconds into police being called to this scene, the police radio shows that, and you can hear that officers are told to, quote, use caution, and that this is an ongoing domestic issue. They are warned. About 4 minutes after that warning goes out, the first shots are fired. This is Philadelphia Police Radio. It captures officers called to 61st and Locust.
Person claiming 6124 Locust, reported a 27-year-old male assaulting an elderly female.
40 seconds later, police radio indicates officers were familiar with the address in Cobbs Creek.
Yeah, just have the officers use caution, respond to that. This is an ongoing domestic issue going on up there.
The radio traffic generated several questions for Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw,
including what the officers knew at the time that they responded, what was put out by radio, and again, you know, how any previous contact with Mr. Wallace factored into what happened yesterday.
Monday, a witness captured Wallace's encounter with police. They can be heard telling him to drop a knife before we stop the video as they fire multiple shots. Court records show Wallace had a long history with law enforcement. He was facing charges for a terroristic threat. He was arrested in March. Court records allege he threatened his child's mother, saying over the phone, "I'll shoot you and that house up." In 2019, he was charged with resisting arrest by kicking the windows and door panels of a police patrol car. In 2016, during a robbery, court records say he grabbed a woman by the neck and held what she believed to be a gun to her head. In 2013, court records say Wallace's mother had a protective order against him and that he violated it when he threw water in her face and punched her in the face and threatened to return to shoot her. The commissioner said she didn't know if the officers who responded Monday had ever dealt with 27-year-old Walter Wallace before.
It is not our intent by any means to be tight-lipped or closed-mouthed about what we do know and when, but we have to be very prudent in ensuring that we respect officers' due process.
And the commissioner said today that neither of the two officers who initially responded to Cobbs Creek were armed with a non-lethal taser. She said that not all Philadelphia police officers carry those as a tool on their utility belt. Police also said that each of the two officers who were on that scene with Wallace, they fired each 7 rounds. Police yet do not know how many of those hit Wallace. It's the latest in Philly. I'm Mitch Blocker, NBC 10 News.
That's right. Those family members tell me that they told police that Walter Wallace Jr. suffered from mental health issues. They say he was taking medication. I did speak to 2 of his cousins today who tell me that his parents are trying to come to grips with what they witnessed.
They're never going to be the same again. You know, they actually sat and watched their son literally get murdered, and it's crazy.
Family members like cousin Anthony Fitzhugh have seen the video that shows 2 Philadelphia police officers shooting and killing 27-year-old Walter Wallace Jr. outside of his mother's row home near 61st and Locust Streets. Wallace Jr. was a husband and father.
These are all school-age children, so now his children have to grow up knowing that the police officers killed my father.
He come from somebody, he belonged to somebody, he came from good parents.
Other family members like cousin Sam White are questioning why police had to kill him.
Police officers are trained to diffuse and de-escalate situations, or they should be trained to diffuse and de-escalate situations. There could have been something else done before you take a person's life.
According to initial reports, Wallace Jr. had a knife and officers asked him to drop it. The family tells me Wallace Jr. suffered from mental health issues and was having a breakdown when police responded.
I don't know if they had tasers on them, but if tasers were an option, let that be your first option.
Every police officer is not issued a taser.
Today, Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw revealed the officers in the video were not equipped with tasers. As for the family, Fitzhugh wants answers.
Is one target and both of you officers are shooting like you're in a war or something.
Back out here live, just by police headquarters, you can see over my shoulder some officers who have posted up outside. We're very close to Franklin Square. Officers have been patrolling on bikes here as well. The family tells me that they know that Walter Wallace Jr. had run-ins with the law. They say it stemmed from those mental health issues. Reporting live outside of police headquarters, I'm Rosemary Connors, NBC 10 News.
Certainly something that police and others will be looking at as well, as all part of this investigation. Rosemary, thank you.
NBC 10 breaking news.
That breaking news: tears, agony, and the question why. Emotions running high tonight for the family of a Philadelphia man shot and killed by police more than 24 hours ago. And for the second night in a row, protesters take to the streets in the name of Walter Wallace in West Philadelphia. Tension between peaceful demonstrators and a police barricade.
From calls for change to chaos, an estimated 1,000 people were seen ransacking stores in Port Richmond, some running off with items, leaving a mess of damage behind. That looting is not over. Sky First 10 is live over more in Port Richmond right now. Tonight, the National Guard is in Philadelphia. You're watching NBC 10 News at 11. I'm Jacqueline London.
And I'm Jim Rosenfield. Philadelphia police also asking some people in certain neighborhoods to stay indoors because of all of this. Officers say when they shot Walter Wallace, he was holding a knife, but his family says he was mentally ill and needed help.
Our team is spread across the city to bring you all of the angles, from businesses boarding up in anticipation of looting to the investigation into just how Wallace's encounter with police took a deadly turn.
We begin with NBC 10's Aaron Baskerville. He was with demonstrators as they marched to an emotional community meeting. He's live outside the UPenn police station right now in University City. Aaron?
Jim and Jackie, and behind me just moments ago, we saw several cops come out with their riot gear and their shields, preparing just in case some of those protesters do come here near 40th and Chestnut. They told me they got word that some were making their way in this direction, telling me that some of these folks were literally burning couches in the middle of Chestnut. You can see over here, it's all boarded up. Serious damage here from last night. Of course, they are hoping that does not happen again. There was a community meeting tonight which tried to bring healing to the family. A community meeting meant for healing led to the mother of Walter Wallace Jr. escorted out in tears. Her family felt a video, which we are not showing, should not have been aired during this time. The video, played without warning by State Senator Anthony Williams, showed a similar situation with a white man with a knife confronting officers in another city. It ended with shots fired, but the man alive.
You think it was right for them to show that video with you and your family still hurt?
No, that wasn't right at all. That didn't prove the point that we're trying to get over this, because we already know about that. We already seen this with my nephew, so why we have to see it again with somebody else to bring that back?
Williams tells NBC 10 he made a mistake and acknowledged the graphic video should not have aired 24 hours after the shooting. I can tell you're emotional right now. I can tell you're upset.
Yeah, extremely. I did not, it was just ill-intended. And clearly not well thought out.
Emotions ran high a day after Wallace had been shot to death by two officers in Cobbs Creek. Investigators say the 27-year-old aggressively chased after the cops with a knife.
Say his name!
Black clergy hit the streets with neighbors near 61st and Locust, chanting Wallace's name and demanding change. They want the officers fired immediately. Dozens made their way over to the 18th District headquarters, where police had the building heavily guarded.
And we're sick and tired of it. We come to lift up our voice. We won't stand for it. We're going to march. We're going to talk until change comes.
Inside a church just blocks away from where Wallace lost his life, his family, elected leaders, and the police commissioner talked change as well. Wallace's uncle had little hope.
I want to see them get fired, but we know that's not going to happen. They should be charged, but we know that's not going to happen. So what they need to do, they need to retrain them. They need to retrain these officers that they have out in these neighborhoods.
As for Senator Williams, he tells me with that video he was just trying to prove a point, how officers treat black and white suspects differently. Behind me you can see those officers that were out here with their riot gear and shields have went inside. They are prepared for anything tonight. Protesters also telling me that they want any and all body cam and video released immediately. For now, we're live in University City. Aaron Baskerville, NBC 10 News.
And most of tonight's protests were peaceful, but in some cases things did get out of hand. Some protesters threw rocks and water bottles at police in West Philadelphia. This video comes from our partners at KYW News Radio. Then there was this moment when a scuffle broke out between demonstrators and police. Skyforce 10 was above this scene in West Philadelphia, in the area where rocks were thrown at officers there.
To Port Richmond for another chaotic scene tonight. A steady stream of looters hitting stores up and down Aramingo Avenue. Police estimating the crowd at about 1,000 people. We saw people stopping their cars in the middle of the street just to load up their stolen items. This Walmart parking lot looks like a traffic jam at rush hour. Worried about just that kind of activity, businesses across Center City boarded up hours before the sun set. NBC 10's Stephen Fisher is live tonight on Chestnut Street. What's happening there, Stephen?
Yeah, Jim, 18th and Chestnut is where we are right now. It's pretty much a ghost town around here. Not a lot of foot traffic or even cars coming by here. A lot of the businesses around here, they boarded up. And when they boarded up, shut their doors, they also called crews in to do exactly what this guy's doing over here, finishing up boarding some of these businesses down here. It's just in case looters make an appearance here tonight. It was the sounds of circular saws that drowned out the typical Center City noise here on Chestnut Street tonight. Crews were busy up and down the block drilling in plywood over storefronts.
Lowe's and Home Depot already closed down, so we're pretty much running out of stuff. We just ran over to New Jersey just to pick up as much stuff as we could.
Chris Marguerite with Tri-State Contracting says the calls have been nonstop.
We probably have about 15 jobs we still got to get to today.
There was a noticeable police presence tonight, officers standing on virtually every corner along Chestnut Street. Even still, many businesses tell NBC 10 they decided to close up hours early, fearing there could be more looting and unrest.
Maybe we close early because we don't know what's going on later, what happened.
Some stores cleaned themselves out and made sure to put away the cash registers. Skyforce 10 was over West Philadelphia, which had the worst of the looting Monday night. Today, several businesses there braced for more. Back in Center City, Dulce Carini here on Chestnut wasn't taking any chances.
We pray again because, some people sometimes they got the knives or I don't know how they call the bats or whatever,
Did they break the windows last time?
Last time they broke the windows.
Yeah, and from the moment we got here on Chestnut Street, we noticed an increase in police presence. That remains to be the case here at this hour. So far, though, no reported looting here in Center City. We're live in Center City tonight. Stephen Fisher, NBC 10 News.
A family in pain, demonstrations, looting at the center of it all, an investigation into a man's death. More than 24 hours after officers shot and killed Wallace, who they say was armed with a knife, there are more questions than answers. NBC 10's Matt DeLucia is at police headquarters with what we know.
The police commissioner today said it's still early and she doesn't have all the facts just yet. Still, over the past 24 hours, the evidence that has been circulating has top city leaders troubled.
I thought it was concerning.
Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner reacting to the witness video of police officers shooting and killing Walter Wallace Jr. in Cobbs Creek Monday afternoon.
I would have to agree with both the police commissioner and the mayor that it presents some very serious questions.
Both Commissioner Danielle Outlaw and Mayor Jim Kenney took questions from reporters this afternoon.
There are many questions that demand answers,
but few have come to light. The commissioner says the department is evaluating what information will be made public and when, including body cam footage worn by the two officers who fired 7 shots each.
I can commit to releasing information, or actually commit to communicating what information will be released within the next 48 to 72 hours. Whether or not that body-worn camera footage will be a part of that, I don't know at this point in the day. But again, I am committed to being as transparent as possible.
Krasner says his office has received some, but not all of the body cam footage. Police say the officers were not equipped with a taser, and many officers on the force are not because the money isn't there.
Yes, it's common for officers to respond to domestic disturbance or any type of call with a gun because it's one of the tools that we carry on our tool belt.
Obviously, this was a heart-wrenching moment for everyone.
The mayor and police commissioner said they both spoke with the family of Walter Wallace last night. As for the officers and their reason for using deadly force,
having not even interviewed the officers yet, we're in no position to be able to answer that question, and anything at this point would be short-sighted and speculatory.
The DA insists there will be a fair investigation.
We are not out to cover for anybody, and we are not out to get anybody.
And again tonight, the police union is asking for patience as the investigation unfolds. FOP President John McNesby says the use of lethal force is a difficult decision and that the officers were aggressively approached by a man wielding a knife. At police headquarters, I'm Matt DeLucia, NBC 10 News.
Still tonight, family members are questioning whether Walter Wallace Jr. had to die. They say the 27-year-old struggled with mental illness. We spoke to them today in West Philadelphia. They tell us they believe Wallace's mental health issues led to his run-ins with the law over the years. Those run-ins included arrests for robbery and threatening his family members. Wallace leaves behind a wife and children.
They're never going to be the same again. You know, they actually sat and watched their son literally get murdered, and it's crazy. These are all school-age children, so now his children have to grow up knowing that the police officers killed my father.
Wallace's family says the people looting are not doing so in his name. Philadelphia's budget calls for mental health workers to aid police. Now, community members want to know if the officers involved in the shooting had de-escalation training.
How are you preparing your officers to deal with a situation where young people have trauma or a mental health issue that allows the young person to stay alive as well as the officer?
Commissioner Outlaw said today mental health workers were not on duty yesterday and that the program funded by council is in its early stages. Count on NBC 10 for complete coverage of the death of Walter Wallace and the aftermath. And if you have the NBC 10 app, you'll get breaking news alerts as soon as new developments happen.
Jackie, that's right. Good afternoon. We, in fact, spoke to two law enforcement officers, as you mentioned, one on either side of the river, who both said, based on the footage provided in that cell phone video you're about to see, that the shooting death of Wallace Jr. does appear to be justified. In their terms, they called it reasonably necessary. They said, given the circumstances, albeit sad and tragic, that it doesn't appear, at least right now, that there could have been any alternate outcome.
They were verbalizing to him. He was not listening.
A subject with a knife can close the distance between themselves and another person, be it law enforcement public, very quickly.
Offering expert analysis of the shooting death of Walter Wallace Jr. in West Philadelphia by two Philly police officers Monday afternoon.
Once somebody's in crisis, it's really difficult to get them out.
Both retired Mount Laurel police officer Corey Jones.
There's a sad, tragic interaction, unfortunately, for the gentleman and his family.
And former FBI Special Agent J.J. Claver are weighing in. They reviewed this cell phone video taken by a bystander.
This is not the kind of situation where a taser or pepper spray is appropriate.
In the midst of screams, it's where we see Wallace holding a knife, a family member trying to console him. We hear officer commands to drop the weapon. Wallace walks quickly around the car and then towards police.
He was making the police back up. They walked into the middle of the street, then they were moving quickly, almost a run backwards in the middle of the street with their weapons already out. They were verbalizing him to stop, to drop something. You could see the one officer in motion with his hand.
In its entirety, the person's cell phone footage of Wallace's imminent fate and deadly force used by police lasted 26 seconds. We asked our law enforcement experts why so many shots were necessary.
You know, the training is to shoot kind of at what's called center mass, right at the center of the target, and to shoot until that threat is neutralized.
There aren't any other options that we have on our tool belt besides verbal commands and then deadly force in that short time frame.
It's not uncommon in law enforcement shootings like this when the officers are interviewed immediately after and asked, how many shots did you fire? They don't know.
Now, additionally, any law enforcement officers that we've spoken to, be it current or former, they are always interested in seeing any and all angles of an incident like this that leads up to deadly force. They will be anxious also to look at any body cam footage or dash cam footage that is released on this incident. We did also learn today that those Philadelphia police officers were not, in fact, armed with any tasers, so that was not an option at all. We will hear from the head of the Camden County Police Force when we see you coming up at 5 o'clock. We're now reporting live in Camden. I'm Sydney Long, NBC 10 News.